right, folks, buckle up. Today's guest doesn't just attend tattoo conventions. He built one of the biggest tattoo convention circuits on the planet. You know the name, Troy Timpel, founder of Villain Arts, apprentice to the legendary Philadelphia Eddie, and a straight-up powerhouse in the business of tattooing. Troy isn't just part of tattoo history, he's helped shape it. In this episode, we get into his roots, his rise, and what it takes to run a national empire while staying true to the ink. No filters, no fluff, just real talk about hard work, hustle, and legacy. Let's get into it. This is the business of tattooing. But yeah, man, I'm glad I finally get a chance to catch up with you because I've wanted to do this for a while now.
Yeah, we talked about it briefly in Chicago, I think last year.
Yeah. Well, I think we were actually trying to do it, I think, back before COVID, even when Scotty and I were doing the old podcast, you know?
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
Scotty was trying to get me on his too. He's like, it's live, so when you swear, it's on there. All right, I don't give a fuck about that.
Yeah, well, his was unfiltered, so I just
Yeah,
found all of his old episodes, so I'm going to start publishing them again.
nice.
But yeah, those got a little bit wild and off the chain sometimes. So yeah,
Cool,
man.
cool.
I don't want to do the same, like I told you yesterday. I didn't want to I'm sure you've done a ton of interviews throughout the years and probably pretty much people ask you all the same damn questions over and over again, you know?
Yeah, I kind of liked your little slant to where you wanted to go with it with, hearing my kind of beginning because, going to work for Eddie, 21 years old, working for Eddie and traveling with him was super rad time and place. And
Yeah.
I figured could talk about Eddie a little bit, tell some crazy stories. That'll be fun.
Yeah, I'm definitely interested in that. Part of what I want to do with my podcast going forward, it's pretty important to me now. Probably more than ever is just to really start trying to capture a lot of the history of our industry, and a lot of the guys like Eddie and Ed Hardy, all these guys from way back when that really laid the foundation for what we have today. And just I feel like we're really losing a lot of that as time goes on. So I want to start
Mhm.
I want to start trying to capture a lot of that. So I'm totally into hearing your stories and how you got started and what really drove your passion to build the empire that you have today.
Cool. All right.
So where do you want to start? Where does Troy's journey into tattooing begin?
Well, I guess I'll briefly start at the very, very, very beginning. I was like a punk rock kid, skateboarding, whatever, all that culture. I was also the high school acid dealer. And then I ran into a little trouble with that. And while I was doing a short little vacation out of high school, in prison, I got, started seeing the tattoo magazines. And I was like, oh my God. And it never really clicked to me that you could make money being an artist and still not be the the conceptions of an artist at the time. For me, I'm like, oh my God, I could make a living being an artist and have fun. Like, wow, this is really cool, and I got really, really super into it. So I got out and I was like, okay, I'm going to get an apprenticeship. So I go into this. I get kind of paroled to my um, uncle's house to kind of work for him as a handyman, for his he was like kind of a slumlord in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. He had like 30 kind of rundown houses. Most of his tenants were Hmong, like Vietnamese boat people. And so there's a lot of maintenance involved, So
Mm.
I'm doing that and I walk into the tattoo shop in that town and the biker guy's like, well, just hang out and you'll learn things and, draw some flash. And, maybe after you have some flash drawn, I'm like, well, how much flash do I need to draw? And he's like, well, yeah, like 10 sheets, I'll start showing you and, and we'll eventually get you some equipment. And, I was like, cool. So I went home and I stayed up for 2 days and I drew 10 sheets of flash and I came back in and I'm like, all right, here's my 10 sheets of flash. What do we do now? And he's like, kind of looked at me like, what the fuck? And I was like, all right. He's like, hey, these aren't bad. And I'm like, looking back on them, they're probably fucking horrible, but, like
Yeah, yeah.
not bad for the time or whatever. So, he's like, all right, well, we'll, think about getting you some equipment and, I'll start training you how to use it, you can work here part time. And I'm like, cool. So I went home and I ordered my Spalding Rogers kit and came back, 2 days later. And I'm like, here's my equipment. What do I do now? You know? And, he started kind of training me and starting to get, prepped. And I started doing like, little tattoos. And in the interim, I was also started art school in Milwaukee. So I was going back and forth from Oshkosh to Milwaukee and, doing handyman work on the weekends, um, working for my uncle and apprenticing to tattoo, all three fucking things at once. So, it was kind of a lot and whatever. So I'm sitting in the shop one day and a cinder block goes through the front door and it's this giant older fat lady screaming at him. And apparently the younger girl that had been also hanging out in the shop that he was banging was 16.
Oh
And
God.
yeah, so I was like, I don't know if this is the environment for me, And
Yeah.
so yeah, not great. Then I was like, I got to get out of this thing, and continued to kind of like try to look for options because it wasn't easy to get into tattooing in 1991.
Yeah, yeah.
And this old other scraggly looking biker guy that looks like Charles Manson walks in where I was hanging out at Perkins, like sitting there drawing with a bunch of goth kids,
Uh-huh.
and starts like mean mugging me and then comes up to me and starts screaming at me. And then we go outside and I'm like, what the fuck is this, And I'm like, I could probably take him. He looks like Charles Manson. He looks a little wiry, but I could probably take him. And then he's like, turns out he's opening a shop up the street and, just was picking a fight with me because I'm the competition or whatever.
Okay.
So I'm like, yeah, I'm kind of looking out to get out of that thing. What option do you have? I assume if you're opening a shop, you're looking for fucking people. So I jumped ship to that.
So
Turned out,
you went from going to possibly fighting the guy to working with him.
oh yeah, in like 2 hours. Yeah, he was going to beat me up, and then they hired me 2 hours later. Fucking charming, I guess. Um, so worked for him, learned the basics, learned it properly, learned it mostly safely, um, until he started really getting back into math, trying to get me to sell math. And I'm on parole. I'm like, I want nothing to do with your goddamn fucking staying up for 3 day Looney Tune fucking garbage. My buddy Julio Avelo, wrote a really cool Tales of a Tattoo Apprentice book. I don't know if you know Julio from Milwaukee,
No.
but he actually came in when I was leaving that situation. And he wrote a really, really cool biography. I'm in the first couple, 10 pages of it. It's real rad. It's on Amazon. You can buy it. It's super cool. Um, but anyway, so I stuck out with that. A lot of crazy stories with that asshole.
Hmm.
It was called The Black in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. The guy's name was Ron Kuhn or Ron Clayton. I don't even know if either of those were his real fucking names. He went by two of them, but do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Um, had a huge Hell's Angels patch, but was not involved with the Hell's Angels,
Okay.
but still had the tattoo on his leg. So I don't know if he was on the run from those guys too. He was just a fucking piece of work. Um, but I got to go to Sturgis. I got to go to, I tattooed the Shades of Blue tattoo convention in like, 90, 2 or 3,
Yeah.
he had me tattooing for money in 2 weeks. you know,
Yeah.
literally 2 weeks for my first tattoo. I'm tattooing for money under this fucking meth head.
Jesus.
Um, so, you know, learned as much as I could. And, you know, then I ended up getting pneumonia, got sick, and I refused to sell meth for him anymore. So he didn't, like, he'd kind of use me up, if you will.
Yeah, yeah.
And then, he had my apprenticeship money. So, hey, time to get a new apprentice. He already methed snorted my fucking apprenticeship money. It was time for new people to come in. Um, so I ended up getting fired, all my equipment stolen, everything, a quote on hit out on me, blackballed from the industry, you
Really?
know? Oh yeah. Like I was
Wow.
like terrified, I'm like fucking 20, 20, 21 years old. And I'm like, fuck, and I've been to, like I went to a couple shows with him. I knew he knew a whole bunch of people. He's got a Hell's Angels patch on his tattooed on his thigh, like I don't know what the fuck he is,
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I'm not feeling real great about it. My really good friend Elvis Bill, who passed away, he's got a son named Billy that tattoos in Madison. Bill McCoy, super rad guy. Um, he left there and got a job working for Eddie. Met Eddie at a convention and schmoozed and got Eddie drunk enough to fucking hire Elvis. So um, I'm just trying to finish out art school and tattooing in Milwaukee at the time, wondering when some bikers are going to kick in my door and fucking kill me. And Elvis gives me a call and he's like, "Hey, Eddie's got a job opening. You want to come out to Philly?" And I'm like, "Fuck yeah, work in a real, actual, goddamn fucking grown up shop. This sounds fucking fantastic, you
Yeah,
know?"
yeah.
So I go out to go work for Eddie. Real nervous that the whole drive there. I'm wondering if this is just some fucking sick joke where I get there and Ron's going to be there and fucking shoot me in the fucking face. Like tattooing was a little it isn't the posh little soft hand salon shit it is now. It was
Yeah, yeah,
it
yeah.
was some real deal shit. Fire burning. Like the whole bit. So I don't know. Went to go work for Eddie. Um, it was funny. He gives me a call. He's like, "Hey, Troy, are you Troy? Are you in there?" And I'm like, "In where, Eddie?" And he's like, "In the phone." And I'm like, "No, I'm holding it to my face and talking to it." And he's like, "Oh, that's better." He always had this like joke of like, "Are you in there?" Like the phone's an inanimate object that he's talking into. Um, so he's like, overnight me your portfolio, to review. And then, so I overnight it, gives me a job the next day and says, okay, you can start on Thursday. And I'm like, "Ed, it's what Thursday?" And he's like, "Well, Thursday." And I'm like, "Ed, it's like Wednesday. I live in Milwaukee." And he's like, "Oh, okay. Well, I guess you can start on Friday then." you know? I'm like, "What the fuck?" And I'm like, "Can I do Monday? Like, I want to just finish up. I got to pack my stuff up. I have an apartment that I need to like clear out, like." And he's like, "All right, Monday's cool. So yeah, drove out there. It was rad as fuck. Getting to go to shows with Eddie, being a young guy. He liked me because I had that good German Wisconsin blood that could keep up drinking with him. So, you know, I was a young, good-looking kid. He was like, "All right, I'm gonna go drinking and go to the
got,
conventions with this kid.
got a good
I'll
wingman
pick up the
now.
girls in his wake." You know. So it was really rad. I got to at a really early age, 21, 22, be tattooing on floors with all the legends. Got to meet, I mean, everybody who's anybody.
Yeah.
All the people, that 3 years ago I was sitting in a fucking prison cell reading about in the magazines, and then I'm sitting there on the floor, following Eddie around like a puppy dog on the fucking show floor.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
fucking great. Um, and I got to progress really rapidly, having access to all of those talented people, and having them, trust me because I'm like Eddie's new kid. You
Right,
know,
right, right.
so it was cool. Eddie was really fun, man. They just don't make people like him anymore.
Sure. Right.
It was it was great. He's crazy as fuck. His biography is really good. It's on Amazon. You can download Eddie's biography. There's like 7 volumes of it, and it's just all crazy tattoo stories from the 50s, 60s, 70s. And it's just a lot of fun. Being able to tattoo for Eddie. I quickly got really clean, really fast. Within 5 years, I was doing more personally than entire shops he had, for my drops. Just, but I also just lived in that shop. I couldn't believe you know, how well I was doing, if you will.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It was cool.
How many shops were in Philadelphia then? Do you remember?
When I went there, I think I went there in '92 or '93. No, '94. Because I started in '93 officially, but really all that nonsense with the bikers and the meth and all that shit was like '92. So I guess '92 I started, but I think it was like '93, '94 that I started, and there was uh four, there was 6 shops in Philadelphia proper with a handful around the suburbs. So I want to say within like a metro area of Philadelphia, there's maybe 7 to 8 tattoo shops. Um, I mean, now there's like 10 tattoo shops or 12 tattoo shops in the Fishtown neighborhood alone, and that neighborhood's only like 20 blocks by 15 blocks. Um,
Crazy. It's crazy.
so and it was it was weird coming in there because there was 3 tattoo shops on the block we were on. Like if you wanted to get tattooed in Philly at the time in the '90s, you came to South Street, and South Street was a really happening, cool strip. It was all full of bars, concert venue, bars and restaurants, and cool kind of countercultural. It was a really fucking cool street. Across the street was a tattoo shop from us called Forbidden Art that the Pagans ran, and
Okay.
then Eddie had Warlock guys that worked for him. You know, and then there
Yeah.
was Billy on the corner, Eddie's son, who opened up shops against him. So Billy opened a shop in Chinatown against Eddie's shop. Billy opened up on South Street. Eddie opened a shop, and then another shop against him. It was like 2 shops on the same block, um, and I got hired. And then he was going to close the second one down, and I ended up not dealing real well with the bikers. I guess I'd kind of had enough of bikers at this point in my
Yeah, yeah.
very
You're
short at that time career still, but still like it was you know I had an appointment, cute girl, kind of flirty with me, and then I'm setting up, got the stencil on her, and he walks up and he's like, "I like your tits," and shows him a tattoo of "I like your tits," and she's like, "Hey, I'm sorry, I just can't do this. This guy's creepy as fuck," and walked out. And I'm like, I told the story to Eddie. I'm like, "Yo, you either got to fix him or clean him up, or I can't work it with him." Do you know what I mean? Like,
right, right,
I
right.
can't be chasing people. He can't be sexually harassing females in my chair before I even tattoo him. Like, what the fuck? How am I going to make any money?
Right, right.
So Eddie was going to close the one shop down up the street, but I was doing like myself. I was doing the volume of the entire fucking shop I left within before the lease ran up. So I just kept that shop. So now there's just still 2 Eddies on one block. Billy, his son, ended up taking over the biker shop when they got too methed out to tattoo anymore and failed. Um, and then there was 2 Eddie shops and 2 of Eddie's son Bill Funk shops, on the block. But me and the guys that work for Bill Funk, we'd all meet at the bar, we'd hang out. We were like we were cool. We kind of just left that between them. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
Although Bill Funk hates the shit out of me, I don't know why. Well, I know one reason why, but I guess I shouldn't have slept with one of his artists, but still, like that has nothing to do with her at work. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But yeah. So I don't know. South Street, the '90s tattooing was fucking great. It was so rad. It was busy. The people were cool. It was, like I don't know. It was just definitely a magic time in tattooing, and you know, really cool. It was also easy as shit because everything was like mostly flash. I mean, I did a lot of custom work, and
Right.
I was like the only one on the street that would do portraits. So, like not that I was super great at it, but good enough to be, solid, clean, passable portraits.
Sure, sure.
Um, so yeah, I mean, I did really well, and it was super cool. Um, Ed was Ed was a lot of fun. I remember once we were sitting in the bar. There was a bar in between all three tattoo shops, and that's where like Eddie would go and hang out on Saturdays, and like I'd always go and have like one drink with Ed, and I'd be like, "Nah, I can't have a second drink, Ed. I got to make you money."
Yeah.
We were sitting there, and Billy came in, and Eddie like stuck his finger in his face and was, the worst thing I ever did was give you my fucking last name and screaming at him, and he's kind of cowering in the corner, and then Eddie picked up a bar stool and threw it over like three people's heads at him.
Wow.
You know, Eddie was he was crazy. He definitely they called him Crazy Eddie for a reason.
Yeah.
A lot of fun with that guy.
Yeah. How long did you, I mean, you pretty much worked for him for forever after that, right? Until you kind of,
Yeah, forever. I mean, technically my third shop, but the first two weren't kind of real situations. So I spent, my entire what 34, 35 year career. I still own, um, or I'm a partner of, the original little small Eddie shop on South Street.
so
Still own it.
you really stayed loyal to Eddie that whole time.
Yeah. When he retired, he broke up the shops to the guys that were managing each of the shops. So he gave me and Furry the little shop. He gave Jerry the big shop. He offered Chinatown to Frank. He sold Atlantic City to Buffy. He sold the K&A shop to Danny. All the people that were kind of the loyal to him, and he sold the shops for cheap. Like less than we were paying him for a year. In commissions.
Yeah. Yeah.
So didn't give them away, but kind of gave them away.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, and then he uh, he gave me the convention to run in 2002 because he was partners with Billy Easton starting it, and then Billy went through a divorce. They had a financial falling out, and I'm not going to trash Billy Easton. Old men that are dead.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
anyway, it didn't work out. So um, financial issues, whatever. So Eddie fired Billy as a partner, took the Philly show by himself, and then the Philly show ended because it just got too much. The cops wanted 15K a year to run security for the show. The cops wanted to do security. Then again, Eddie's dumbass was having bikers run security for him that were also allegedly shooting guns off in the parking lot and causing fights and
Good
everything
God.
else. You know, Eddie had a 2 hour open bar as the opening party, and that ended up with like a lot of police activity.
Oh,
So
sure.
there were some issues with the Philly show before I took it over.
How
Um,
long how long did Eddie run the Philly show? When did he start that?
he started it in 98 and was partners with Billy 98, 99, ran it himself for 2000. And I forget if he did 2001 or if he ended it and I took it over. I know I took it over in 2002, but it went into a hiatus before I could get it rebooked. But he had basically gotten kicked out of all the airport hotels down there for excessive damage, too much party, too much, you know what I mean? Too
Yeah.
much chaos. Like there was a rumor that never happened, but it's a great idea rumor that somebody picked a soda machine up from the 16th floor and threw it over over
The balcony.
the balcony into the lobby
Oh
where it had
God.
exploded, which would be a great visual, but that had never actually happened,
Did
even
it
though it was
really?
a common rumor about the show.
Yeah.
But a plausible one to believe with how the show was.
So
You
how,
know,
so how did that show operate in the early days? I mean, how many booths would have been at that show, or and what caliber artist came to that show?
it was all magazine cover people. Um, for the most part. Some locals, some just friends of Eddie. Like pretty
Hmm.
much you had to be like kind of in the inn to be able to get in there with him. But he was also kind of cool with it. But, and there weren't a lot of people traveling. The convention thing wasn't really a big thing yet back then. Um, I want to say the first floor plan was 55 booths, which
Okay.
was probably like, I don't know, 2 rows of the Chicago or
Well,
Philly show now.
that's still a pretty decent sized show
Yeah, I mean,
for back
55
then.
booths in '98 was,
Yeah, for
yeah,
back
I
then,
mean,
that's
a
a
sizable thing,
yeah,
you know.
yeah.
Um, yeah, I think that's all it ever got to before I took it over, and I wanted to move it from the from the airport and the seedy little hotel, and there wasn't enough space, and I wanted to move it into Center City. So I found the biggest hotel in Philly that, or really one of the only ones that has any kind of real meeting space like that would do a private or public event like that, and that was the Sheridan. So I started the show at the Sheridan, and um, I did I grew it to 160 booths and did a roast of Philadelphia Eddie for my first show, and it was definitely a learning experience. I mean, Eddie kind of taught me whatever, but I also wanted to advertise it a lot more. And going back a little bit more in my journey before I go into the convention thing or finish that or how it got into there, um, I started in 97, 98, starting to do Flash, making Flash into books. Like nobody had done like books and assembled it and sold it into as collections of Flash
Yeah.
before. You know, um, I think Hardy had like one book of Sailor Jerry out at the time,
Hmm.
in the mid '90s like that. But like other tattooers were just selling a loose set of 10. So I said, fuck it, I'll do like 30, 40 page, little collections. So I started that, and then I started doing tattoo clothing. Started doing these bowling shirts. So I started manufacturing bowling shirts that had tattoo imagery on them and custom sewn, and they're real cool. So I started doing a lot of the shows and started doing what pretty much every show that there was, like all 8 of them or 9 of them or whatever at the
Yeah, yeah.
in the '90s. So I started to meet a lot of people that were more regional to different areas, and did a larger invite to make the show bigger, and then tried to spend you know every dime and invested more into advertising the show to try to build it, because nobody was doing like a shows that size then. Do you know what I
Sure,
mean?
sure,
So
yeah.
I wanted to build it into something that the general public could come and enjoy the magic of what that is. All the conventions back then, even Richmond back then, which was the big one. Richmond was the big one. Um, Richmond was still only 60, 70 booths.
Right.
Um, but so I mean, kind of limited, but it wasn't a ton of public. It was mostly tattooers coming in and tattooing other tattooers. You know, um, more famous tattooers getting tattooed by lesser famous tattooers. And some collectors, but for the most part, it wasn't. It wasn't really heavy advertising on the radio. When I came in on it, I was like, I need to, for the space and to make the money to the space that I had. I had to fill 150 booths. So luckily I was traveling and had a year to travel to really promote it and get people to come. And a lot of people were really excited because a lot of them were, and a lot of the other tattooers were good tattooers, but they also weren't in the old boy club to be able to even do a show. Not
Right,
that they didn't have the talent, it was just kind of reserved for the people in the magazines, and the way to get in the magazines was to be on the at the shows
right.
or win the contests or be like part of it. But then, the catch 22, you couldn't. be a part of it if you're not a part of it. Do you know what I mean?
Sure. Right, right.
So, me coming in and advertising enough to the general public, starting to slam billboards on it. Like I was my own street team for the first like I don't know, maybe 10 years of the Philly show. The Philly show's 28 years running now,
Yeah, yeah.
including Eddie's tenure. But it, I promoted the shit out of it, way past what anyone was anyone was doing at the time, and they all got there and they're just like, "Oh my god, this thing is so huge," and you know,
Yeah.
it was it was super rad, and Eddie was blown away that like I was able to pick that up and do you know triple the size of what he had done and made it at that time the biggest in the country. Well, I mean, still is, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Kept able to you know was able to grow it, but for me, what I wanted to do, you started to the 90s started to, your clientele at first was kind of, 70s, 80s. Your clientele wasn't like normal people. It was, military, a lot of cops got tattooed, a lot of criminals got tattooed, a lot of, you know, but it wasn't a fucking soccer mom coming to your tattoo shop in her minivan and getting a Pinterest tattoo. Like
Right.
that wasn't a fucking thing.
Right.
Like people were still afraid of, coming down there and they're seeing motorcycles outside and guys in gang jackets and, everything
Yeah.
else. The public was kind of afraid to get tattooed.
Yeah.
And I wanted to make this this party to be one that was invited for everybody. I wanted to make it a safe place, make it an attractive thing, make it a fun thing, so that soccer moms from the suburbs can bring their minivan down and get a tattoo. And I think in doing so and in expanding it, you know, really pushed and opened up tattooing to the general public where that nobody had ever done that before me. And it really opened up a lot of doors for everybody, a lot of clients for everybody, because you know essentially advertising to the general public had never really been done. I mean, everyone says they do, but they're trying and they're whatever.
Right.
But I mean, for the most part, other than maybe tattoo shops running an ad or two on a newspaper or in the in the thing, or maybe on the radio, like nobody slammed it the way that I did.
Right.
Like I
Right.
my promotions. I mean, you ask anybody in the city of Philadelphia the week before my show, or they see your tattoos, every Uber driver knows what it is. Every bartender in the city knows that show's coming. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like everybody in Philly knows it's coming. Like, it's definitely, I created that thing into tattooing becoming part of pop culture of Philadelphia with how much and how fast I kept expanding and growing that show. My last year of the hotel show, I ended up taking 2 floors of that. It was a 323 booth show, I think. I'm like a number centric dude, so you have to excuse that as we keep going on. But
Yeah, it's fun.
325 booths maybe, um, 2 floors, and it was like traffic jams in the aisles. The hotel had never dealt with like an occupancy thing, and I'm selling wristbands and they're counted, but you don't know how many people are in the room. There's no clicker to see how many people are in, how many people are out. But it was like, for any way of measuring an occupancy load being overfill, I had definitely like surpassed any kind of degree of fucking safety there possibly could be measured, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I've definitely been out to the Philly show a couple times and always the damn lines just completely outside the freaking door and going around the block, and it's been always crazy like that.
Yeah. Were you ever able to make it to the hotel shows, like the pre 2012 shows there?
No, I think maybe the first time I came to Philly might have been around 2015, maybe.
Okay.
somewhere around that time frame.
Okay. I think 15 was the year I went upstairs. Or maybe I was still downstairs then, um, at the convention center.
Yeah, it
But
was. I
yeah,
just remember it was massive. That's all. It's like, God damn, this is huge.
yeah, 2011, I, went to the office of the hotel manager to pay my final bill off and then bring him cash because I was kind of, for the last couple of years, I'd been just bribing him with cash personally to rebook my show
Yeah,
because he said that it was past what'll really fit in there. And yeah, they,
but they still wanted your business.
they did until they didn't. So the last year I was there, I came in there, I gave him the envelope of money. He said thank you, and then introduced me to this girl that was sitting in a chair in there. And he's like, "She's the your new sales rep for the Pennsylvania Convention Center. Congratulations, you're moving your show there." And I'm like, "Well, maybe I'll just not advertise so much. Maybe I'll just pull that back." And he's like, "Nope, you're with them now." And I'm like, "Fuck." Um,
So
I
you didn't
imagine.
even you didn't even make that choice. They made the choice for
Oh
you.
yeah, that was here you go.
Wow.
Welcome to your new masters.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned some of that because it answered some of the questions I had because obviously in the 90s, like you said, tattoo shops were pretty taboo places, like those were scary places to just the general public person. So like it's really interesting to hear you talk about how you started bridging that gap and I would say that you have a large part in growing. I mean, a lot of people say, "Oh, Ink Master and TV is what really made the tattoo scene explode and become mainstream." But even before all that, you were pushing those boundaries and opening those doors to the general public and welcoming them into your shows and growing those crowds.
Yep. And I mean, I remember James Vaughn at the first Philly show that I ran and just swept the awards with this like flawless Japanese back, full body suit. I
Hmm.
mean, full body suit. Every single line, every single piece of shading, every single piece of color was like fucking absolutely perfect. You could spend 15 minutes picking through every inch of that skin, and you couldn't find one flaw. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so I wasn't surprised a couple years later when he went on on Ink Master.
Right, right.
Um, but I think a lot of Ink Master. I think the third season 3 and 4, they actually did their casting at my shows. So a lot of the people they were just picking them right off my show floor.
Wow.
Um, Season 6 they cast at my Tampa show. That's why like 3/4 of that season were Florida artists because they're too lazy, I guess, to fly to another one of my shows to cast the rest of it.
uh, are you a fan of the tattoo shows or not?
I am, but I'm also a fan and grateful for the impact that they gave us because
Yeah,
you know, being an art school kid, even though I dropped out after a year and went to go work for Eddie, but I did a year of art school and it was a very valuable learning experience having that true foundation in art,
sure.
learning what balance and contrast and different
Yeah,
techniques and what
right.
makes an aesthetically pleasing piece of art. Um, but I think Ink Master really showed people what was more capable of tattoos and to the public. And I think it really developed a lot more of an interest in the same way that the magazines had, prior to them. And, the magazines, push tattoo artists to do bigger stuff, more cool stuff,
Right.
more, like, oh shit, we can do color portraits. I want to do color portraits. Let's do
Yeah.
color portraits. Like, you see things and I'm going to learn how to do that. I'm going to do that better. I'm going to do that better than that better. Like it, I don't think tattooing would have evolved um, nowhere near as much without Ink Master, the sense of competition, and having the public be interested in getting larger scale stuff and finding better artists, like saying, well, I get that this guy might be more expensive, but I want I want to get tattooed by the guy that didn't get kicked out first. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not saying those particular artists, but in their local town, it's a food chain. You know, you have the really good shop, you have the mid shop that's kind of a little cheaper, and then you have the hood rat shit. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And or the the rundown scratcher fucking thing that you can get a cheap ass tattoo in. And I think it helped really develop a food chain within tattooing of people knowing the difference between what a good tattoo is supposed to look like and what it's not, you
Right.
know?
Yeah.
And I think they did a good job. They could have done even a better job casting losers for it. Do you know what I mean? To get more contrast in seeing
Seeing
what
good
tattoo
versus
is better.
bad, right?
I think a lot of the common complaint is that the public can't tell the difference between you know what won Ink Master and what was runner up. Do you know what I mean? I mean, I guess it's even hard for me sometimes.
Sure. Well,
Like I was judging.
it's like
Yeah,
judging tattoo competitions. I mean, you know, that's a difficult job sometimes because you get a lot of really good tattoos in there, and then you just got to pick one winner out of, a handful of really good tattoos, and that's like, how do you do that? You know what I mean? Like sometimes there's not that big of a difference, you know? It's easy.
um,
You could give
um,
first place to five different people easily.
yeah, and I just got back from Houston yesterday, and the walking around the room and seeing like what's going on and saying hi to people and whatever, and like the blessed guys, the golden, um, fuck, I forget the other name of the shop. Anyway, it's like there's 9 different people working on 2 artist full leg sleeve collabs on the floor, and I'm like, like walking around on Friday, I'm like looking and they're, full leg stenciled. There's 2 guys, like setting up, two
Yeah,
separate ink trays,
yeah, yeah,
2 machines, and they're both, you know, uh, sailor and the tramping their way to the fucking middle. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And I'm like, oh fuck. So on Sunday, I went up to my buddy Flip Shades Rick,
yeah,
and
yeah,
I was like, yo, Flip Shades, do you have anything in best to show? And he's like, no, I was kind of looking around the room and I saw that I'm against like a million 2 person collab leg sleeves. And I'm like, yeah, no matter how clean I do anything as, even a half day tattoo, I ain't fucking placing. And I'm like, can you judge with me? Because like last year I had 3 judges up there, good judges, but like these guys that are in Houston, they're all in competing shops with each other, and they're all there to fucking show each other who's gonna win.
yeah,
Like judge with me, please. I had 4 of us up there. Jeremy Miller from the TV show Ink Master
yeah.
was judging with us. So like I had my buddy Ryan from Houston, local Houston artist, but super cool neo-trad guy. Um, So I was like super glad we had 4 of us up there to really bounce bounce it off because you know out of 9 fully rendered, fully saturated leg sleeves, which one is going to win? Like
Right,
the competition, the what they're putting out now is fucking crazy.
right.
My
Yeah,
Atlanta show is the same way. I've been like all year really. There's a lot of international guys that are coming in and doing that too, like just doing 3 day collabs, flying here with a client, spending all that money just to fucking showcase their shit. Do you know what I mean?
yeah.
Or win awards to stay in the country for visas, but that's a whole other fucking podcast, I guess.
Oh yeah, we can get
Um,
into the weeds with that.
I don't want to get into the politics of that. Hell, it's burning enough for both of us right now on that fucking conversation.
So what's your favorite style of tattoo that you're seeing today, currently? What are you really like, wow, that's just freaking awesome. Like, because there's so many different styles out now. It's crazy.
There is, and it's fun to see like one of the collabs that I think I think it got second in tattoo of the day, but didn't. Oh no, he placed in best of show. I forget fourth or third, but mixing geometric with color surrealism.
Hmm.
So it was like weird melty faces that looked like an oil painting with all these really fucking clean sacred geometry that was like kind of tying it together, like really weird, different. Like, um, you know, they're really pushing the envelope. I mean, the color realism thing is getting really crazy. The textures that they're starting to put in there with, like glossing over different purple tones over the top of, like layering their, they're using, high pigment load ink to begin with, but then they're starting to thin it out to even create layers so that, the it's not just one color. It has almost a depth of the way that the colors are going in.
Yeah.
Kind of like the way they make stained glass where they put, you know, 10 different layers of thin, layers, and then they heat the glass to make the fucking colors and textures. It's
Yeah. Yeah.
really, really, really cool. Um, the black and gray stuff is getting really smooth because people are, for a while it was there, there's black and gray guys and there's opaque guys, and the black and gray guys are tattooing you know like like Jack Rudy fucking taught them,
Right.
or refused to teach them and they figured it out. But um and the guys that were doing black and gray with the opaques were pretty much just putting it in like, you know like color realism, but
Sure.
with gray tones. But now they're kind of thinning it out into using more of a, almost where you can't tell if it's one or the other, like halfway in between that, you know?
Hmm.
And I don't even think it's really pigment sets that are setting that up. I think they're just mixing it to create different subtle textures within the black and gray tattoo that they want the vest of this guy to be a little bit subtle of a tone, so it pulls away from um, the skin, which has a little bit slighter of a warmer tone, just very subtle nuances. And then they're able to go faster with more of a trad dot into a texture of making this, the leaf do this, where the rose is soft, the leaf has this, dotted muddled texture. But it's all the really good black and gray guys now are mixing just a little bit of the opaques in with um, different styles of the shading. Like it used to be, your coloring or your whip shade. Your you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And now it's just so many little hybrid things of using subtle parts of opaque to create different textures to pull different objects away from each other in the tattoo, but
Yeah.
still using realism within it. But it's not, it's definitely not the same paintbrush painting the whole painting. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so that's kind of impressive to see more of the start of, really. I'm just kind of really seeing a couple. Benny Gonzalez is a good example out of Orlando,
Hmm.
who's doing that now. Um, Added him in my Florida shows as a sponsored artist, and he was all stoked about it. Um, it's funny, he lost tattoo of the day on a Friday and placed in best of show because the tattoo was like so angry and not clean on Friday. Like it
Okay.
was just too red. Like his client must have just sprinted to the fucking stage, still bleeding off the fucking table. Um, but man, his,
But then he took best to
his
show.
his yeah, and then placed in best of show. Like it's weird to see like something, because he's creating so many different little textural elements in what he's doing with so many different things that when it was all still kind of kind of red or still angry, you couldn't really see the full gravity of the genius behind all of his little textury tricks,
Right.
his little mixing color theory into his subtle black tricks. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
And there's a lot of guys that are doing that now or starting to do that now, but it's real cool to see. And I think a year from now you're going to see a lot more of that. And I think people that are watching this podcast are probably going to like, well, go to that dude's Instagram. But do you know what I mean? Start to really look on Instagram at what I'm talking about. How they're not using the same speed and movements to make the mark as they will to define a different slight texture to separate the objects. You know, a leather jacket doesn't have the same texture as asphalt, which doesn't have the same texture as hair, which doesn't have the same texture as the smoothness of your skin or
Yeah.
the petal of a flower. Like all of those things need to have a different visual language to really pop off, you know?
Yeah, do you know Potter Joe in Canada?
Um, don't know him, but familiar with him.
So the first time I watched him tattoo in black and gray, it kind of changed my whole perspective on black and gray realism because I'd never seen anybody tattoo the way he tattooed. And his finished tattoos just look phenomenal. And if you ever just sit and watch him tattoo, it just like it gives you a whole different it's just different than I've ever seen anybody else tattoo black and gray realism. You know, it's just a whole different approach. The way he just soft layers everything and then he just builds and builds and builds and builds. And by the time he's almost barely ever touching the skin, you know, it's just like how you even getting ink in there? It's just like he's just grazing the surface of the skin and just doing these light layers and just building and building and building. And by the time he gets done, it's just this incredibly smooth masterpiece. And you're like, damn, dude, like
Yeah.
it's
I got
it,
a sleeve from Paul Booth in 96, 95, 96. And, I was real fascinated. And at that point, I was like really on this like machine kind of thing, like trying to learn machines and,
yeah.
like that. And he tattooed me with a cutback liner with a huge gap on it, you
Wow.
know? So the thing was fast but soft. Do you know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
And that's the way Paul tattoos. He just layer, 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 layer,
Yeah.
layer, 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 and then I mean it just looks fucking round, and
Right.
all super fucking quick at it too.
Yeah, I know.
Um,
He's super fast. I've always thought black and gray realism is probably, in my mind, the most challenging tattoo to pull off flawlessly. Just because I feel like in black and gray you can see all the mistakes. You know what I mean? Like whereas with color you can hide stuff a little bit easier, but black and gray I think is a little bit harder to hide anything in.
yeah, it's also it goes in quick and has no mercy. Like color you're just kind of grinding it out, still putting that red in, still
Yeah.
putting that red in, still putting that red in. Well, I guess now you have 33 megs and you're just like, ah, red's in. Man, what I would have given for a 33 mag in 95. Woo.
Jesus. Yeah. Well, you guys were
That
still making your
would have been
needles
quite
back
the grip.
then.
Oh, yeah, just this time. Sorry. But, I think that's another thing that's like a mixed bag. People are like, the supply companies and China and the conglomerations taking over the industry. And I've seen your your posts and comments a lot. And I'll just make one just quick little comment about that. Like I said, how I would have sacrificed whatever for a 33 mag in 95. Having that kind of a competition and having professional manufacturers get into the business and actually bringing it to you know places in China that do high-end medical equipment to manufacture our needles, and you know, stuff that America just really, post-industrial revolution don't even have the capacity to make, really changed it. There was, when I came in, they were starting to use bug pins. They were starting to do variants. Icon Supply had, you know, so many different needle variations that they sold in three different taper thicknesses and different taper points and different. Do you know what I mean? And they
Yeah.
kind of got away from that, and now it's kind of, but the consistency and how clean and how fine the needle points are, how much less trauma in the skin for how much the manufacturing and the competition of the manufacturer of our equipment had gotten, really improved the quality of tattooing from the competition. And
Right.
I think having that, and I mean the better suppliers, of course, have better relationships with China and overseeing the quality of the products being made. And I mean, there's definitely a food chain within that, and you can buy needles for half the price from crazy whatever needle company, but those are all kind of the throwbacks that you know people like you and you know uh, the even the guys from Nexus that are going over there in Tatzel, inspecting the facilities, Da Vinci needles, like making sure and going to China every couple months to oversee the manufacturing runs and quality controls and all that, really makes a difference. And if it wasn't for that competition, would we still be tattooing with whatever? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'd say
Yeah.
like I'd say most of what we tattooed with out of the '90s weren't even like C grade needles compared to today. Do you know what I mean?
Right. Right. No, yeah, it's definitely I mean, even tattoo needles are one thing, but even tattoo inks, like you just said a few seconds ago, like heavy pigment load inks, like the inks today are way different than they even were back in the 90s, like there's just a big improvement. We talked about this a lot in our regulatory discussions, which I'm a part of all the time now, but it's like, all this focus on tattoo ink and the safety in tattoo inks, and a lot of times we bring up, like, well, you guys talk about all the health risks that could be associated with tattoo ink. But what do you think people were getting tattooed with back in the 40s and 50s, man? Like I've seen tattoos on my grandpa's arm for World War II, and I don't even want to know what the fuck was in that ink. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like,
I
what?
mean, it was,
He
yeah,
got that shit at a port at a freaking Navy ship port, somewhere fucking weird, and fucking who the hell knows what was in that ink.
yeah. They're getting tattooed with car paint and shit.
But the
Like,
point is, dude, my grandpa's arm didn't fall off. You know what I mean? Like he never
true,
got
true.
cancer from whatever the fuck it was. So and I can guarantee you the inks are 50 times safer than they were back then. Today, the
Yeah,
manufacturing is way more scrutinized. A lot of manufacturers are running in ISO certified facilities, and the FDA is now putting all this scrutiny on manufacturers. So yeah, I guess yeah, we're at a crossroads with all that now, and we gotta work together to overcome that regulatory beast that we're faced with today for sure.
APT is doing a good job with that. I was sitting the board until I think I stepped down a little less than a year ago, but just because I don't have time, I'm running like fucking 32 shows. I live out of a suitcase like a well dressed
Yeah,
hobo,
yeah,
you know. But
yeah,
yeah, I mean, APT is fighting the good fight with that real well.
yeah, yeah. I'm with the APT. We're trying to get more people to join up. We got to get the numbers up. We're
Yeah, I
we're
fly a banner every show. They don't pay me. They don't, I'm not even really on the board anymore, and I still, it cost me about $200 a show worth of, the union labor to, stagehand riggers to hang each of those banners. I still, my little donation to tattooing's future every show.
Yeah, that's good. I wanted to talk to you about it anyways, so I'm glad you brought it up. I try to mention the APT on every podcast I do just because I want the tattoo community to get involved with the APT because we've got to rally behind their efforts and they're the only voice we really have because the FDA isn't interested in new pop-up organizations. They want to be talking to people that been having a voice in the tattoo industry, and the APT's been around for 30 years now, you know, so
Yeah.
yeah. So, but now the challenge is trying to get the manufacturers to come together and unify, which is a challenge, especially with all the politics behind the scenes in the manufacturing space and the supply company and the bad blood that's happened between, you know, business owners over the years. It's just they try to do it with the CTS and they've tried to do it with a couple of other organizations after that, and they just haven't been able to get the manufacturers to put their personal differences aside long enough to actually work on safe manufacturing practices that we can all live under the rules of, you know. But yeah, so Philly, let's go back to the Philly show. You how long was it before you started wanting to branch out into other cities and start taking the show on the road?
Well, I did the Philly show, took that over '03, like '02, '03, from Eddie. And I kind of helped him with the last 2 years of when Billy when he pulled out from Billy. Like I was Eddie's street guy. I booked a couple bands for him to play the show. Do you know what I mean? I
Yeah,
booked
yeah.
a sideshow person. Nobody had ever done sideshow in a tattoo convention before.
Hmm.
And I was like, Eddie, this would be perfect. This guy's crazy. He does all this crazy stuff. And he's like, I don't know. I don't know. Do people gonna like that? And I'm like, you're fucking crazy, Eddie. They like you. And he's like, oh yeah, yeah, that's a good idea. You know. So I was kind of helping him out with it, and then I did the Philly show and grew that, and then year two managed to fill that whole 150 booth room and expanded into the lobby, got it up to maybe 170 booths or something by year three of the Philly show. And I said, I'm going to try doing Milwaukee. Actually, '05 I did Milwaukee, so I guess that would be 2 years in. My I grew up in Milwaukee and left Wisconsin to go work for Eddie. And my mom was always like, why don't you ever come home and to visit and whatever. So I'm like, hey mom, I'm going to come home and visit and run a show here. So I threw a show, and it was really fun, and there was a ton of Chicago people that were coming up to it because there wasn't a show in Wisconsin or in Chicago. And the show that was there was kind of this rundown biker flea market kind of show run by a guy named Boogie.
Hmm.
Not even making that up, Boogie.
Right, right.
Um, I think he probably passed away by now. That was like fucking what 20 some years, 5 years ago. But then I think Chicago was my third show, which I decided to expand because so many people were coming from Chicago. That I was getting such an audience that I decided to do a Chicago and a Milwaukee show. And then Baltimore was my next one. I used to come down and hang out with this guy T, who you know really helped me out a lot in learning how to tattoo. Because I was working at Eddie's, but I was going down to Baltimore on my day off to get tattooed by T and hang out with him, get out of the city, and we go and I'd get a 5 hour tattoo from him, and we go drinking in Baltimore, I'd stay at his house, eat
Yeah.
crabs and whatever. And I kind of like Baltimore. It was a cool little town. So I did Baltimore next. And, it was more of like, for me back then, not like I'm establishing a network, I'm doing this. It was like, hey, I like that place. I want to go visit that place. Why don't I do a show there and then I can come and, hang
Yeah.
out there?
Yeah, yeah.
And I guess I still do that because last year, actually the year before, um, I had 2 states left on my Been to America and Done That list, which was Alaska and Portland, or in Maine. So I did a show in in Alaska, and I did a show in Maine. I ended up pulling out of Alaska. Um, I did a Fairbanks show, and the shows were really good, but it's really expensive to do anything in Alaska.
Okay.
And I wasn't drawing the public as much, but the public was getting tattooed like crazy, like walking out with two or three bandages each, you know.
Okay. Okay.
So it was lucrative for them, but I lost money the last year I did it, and I was like, yeah, I can't go back there. That
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
health department in Alaska is the biggest fucking sweatiest bag of dicks I've ever seen. Um, so so that brings me to Baltimore 2008. So then I was like, I don't know, maybe I'll do a show halfway between what's between Chicago, Milwaukee, and my two East Coast shows. So I did Louisville, Kentucky was actually my fifth show, because I figured if I did a show in between those two shows, I'll draw the artists that are doing my Baltimore, Philly, and the artists that are doing my Milwaukee, Chicago show. And, I can do a bigger gathering and kind of in the middle. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And Louisville's, I don't know, kind of a, it's not a big city. It wasn't as lucrative as, population wise to be able to build a show there, but it's super fun. And I really enjoyed, when I did it. Um, I ended up pulling out of Louisville because the health department got so greedy. They wanted $400 a booth in licensing fees
Jesus
if you're an
Christ.
out of state artist. And I was like, the last year I did it, I ate half of that fee, like $200 a booth. But at at 700, yeah, at 700 a booth, um, no artist is going to be able to afford 900. But at
Right.
$500, there wasn't enough money left over for me to really advertise the show to keep any momentum going. My formula just didn't really work. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I mean,
Yeah.
I limped out of there with a little money, but not. Do you know what I mean? Not worth my time.
Right.
Um, so I ended up moving that show to Nashville later. Now I'm in year 4 in Nashville, but so I guess it was maybe 4 years ago I bailed on Louisville. And then I started doing, I don't know, I think I did Tampa, Kansas City. I think Kansas City's at 10 years, 11 years now. Um, Tampa's around the same. Forget which one I did before that, before each other. Uh, did Cleveland a couple of years later, did Cincinnati, started going further west, you know. Just got back from Houston. That was year 7 for Houston. Uh, tried Dallas, tougher market. Didn't do Dallas this year because there's like 6 shows there, and the public is most of those 6 shows aren't very good, or all of them. I don't know.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
anyway. There's some low cards in the tattoo convention deck for Dallas, so the public I think didn't have a lot of interest in going. It wasn't like a big festival thing. They didn't have like nonstop high energy entertainment on the stage. They didn't have the amenities that our show has, like a lot more to do. You walk into a villain art show, it takes you 2 hours to just walk the room, and then there's constant entertainment. Even if you don't get tattooed, it's like worth an eyeful. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right. Right.
And there's no way you can walk through that thing and not want to further get tattooed. Do you know what I
Sure.
mean?
Right.
Um, and it draws them in, and like I started in my format doing the entertainment to give the wife something to do while the husband gets tattooed, the husband to get something to do and watch the kids while the wife gets tattooed. Like to keep ambient entertainment, and also to kind of keep a fun energy thing going for the show.
Yeah.
Um, I started doing suspension at Chicago in '07 because my Milwaukee show. Actually, I might have done it in Milwaukee in '06. I forget, but a bunch of Piercer kids were running around the show with luggage carts that they were suspended from the hotel, and they just rigged up a luggage cart and were doing their own little private suspensions in around the floor. And I was like, that is rad as fuck. Do you want to actually like perform for me next year? And they're like, oh, perform. We never even thought about like performing for an audience and getting paid. And I'm like, well, I mean, yeah, So yeah, it kind of brought that whole suspension thing into what it is now. Out of many of the mimic things every show does now, that
Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
did first.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. I just I see you adding new shows all the time and it's crazy. I just think to myself, I'm like, man, I guess by now you've got it pretty good formula and you got a good crew and it's do you just follow your tour around, because you're back in Puerto Rico now. You just finished the show, right?
Yeah, flew back from Houston. Tomorrow I fly to Nashville. Fly back from Nashville on Monday. Fly to Oklahoma City on Wednesday. Back to
Sweet.
Puerto Rico. Then I got a weekend off. I'm gonna go have a barbecue over at Flip Shade's house. He
Yeah.
moved to Puerto Rico,
Yeah, he told me that.
so yeah, we're gonna go barbecue it up. I got two employees in Puerto Rico that they're a couple. One of them does my social media and does really, really, really well with it. I've been friends with them for like 20 years. They're from Philly, and the other's like a personal assistant and runs my real estate companies. I kind of quietly, I don't really talk about my real estate thing a lot, but I think I have a pretty substantial real estate thing going on as well, and my
Yeah.
copious spare time.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I know you're a well-rounded entrepreneur, not just in tattooing, but I know you've dipped out outside of tattooing and done some investments in real estate and stuff like that. So, but yeah, I think that's what really makes you an interesting person from the business side of things. Just the vision that you have. I mean, just to take Eddie's idea and just really blow it up to a whole new level and just keep growing it all the time. And then not only that, but just have the vision to and the desire to want to go outside and just like what else can I get into? What else can I do? So what other passions do you have in life? Obviously you said real estate. You're still painting a lot, right?
Not painting as much as I used to. I miss it. I was painting a lot for a while. My back is kind of jacked up, so I'm kind of um, trying to do yoga and get my back a little bit more so I can paint a little bit more. But I'm
Yeah.
also just busy as shit with how many shows and how I've expanded and going all of my businesses and expanding in different directions. And there's just still me in the middle now, just trying to
Yeah.
oh, what am I doing? The real estate thing I got into kind of accidentally. I had this clothing label in in the late '90s to, I think it probably ended or petered off in about 2005, six maybe. You know, it
With the
was like,
bowling shirts.
yeah, with the bowling shirts. I really hit it when that rockabilly, swing dance thing was really hip.
Yeah.
And I was just murdered it. And then all of a sudden that fad was over and it was like nobody wanted them. And I was like, fuck me, you know?
Yeah.
But so I bought a warehouse, for my growing business. And I was living in this kind of illegal warehouse kind of situation, like a loft. It was just basically like a, you know, semi finished, warehouse kind of living. And I was like, I'm going to buy a big giant warehouse and turn it into, little artist lofts like this. And then got into the project and realized that the building that I'd bought for 300 grand was a good $1 million out of building code
Oh, wow.
and barely zonable for turning into an apartment building. And as an illegal squat with um, L and I kind of things with that to rent it as art studio space rather than people living there, but then let them live there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
kind of did that for a number of years, and it took me a decade to build that whole thing out. And I built it on my back with before I finally got financing to build an addition onto it. But I built the whole thing out on my back, but it took me a decade. But
Wow.
after that, I refinanced it, and then when I refinanced it, I got like a fucking lottery check back for my 10 years worth of
Sweat equity.
blood and fucking tears in that goddamn thing.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was like going in on my days off, like working 7 days a week, tattooing like union contractor, carpenter guys to come in on the weekends and smash shit out. And I just sleeve them out, Big Mag loose fucking sleeves on them on my days off to get them to you know swing hammers on the weekends for free because I couldn't afford to get the job done any other way. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I got a huge lottery size fucking check as a refinancing, and bought another 15 properties, refied those, bought another 15 properties, refied those. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
All of a sudden I just had this giant fucking pain in the ass building, and I never really thought of how much of a pain in the ass being a landlord, or how shitty tenants are, or how much everyone hates their fucking landlord, or any of that dumb shit. Like, I'm gonna buy a warehouse and live there with all my friends forever. It's gonna be great. And
Is
then
the
all of a sudden
majority
it's
of your
like,
real estate in Philly?
yeah, most of it. I bought a And then I have random weird shit. Like I bought a church in New Jersey to turn into a 6 unit apartment building that just started working on after fighting the city for zoning for like fucking half a decade.
Yeah.
Um, I have a 4 unit building in Canal Fulton, Ohio, that a tattooer friend of mine was like, "Hey, this building's for sale. They're going to throw me out. You should buy it. I think it's really lucrative." And I'm like, send me the rent roll and what they want for it. And I was like, wow, that is really lucrative, even at those stupid, shitty, low rents.
Yeah.
So I bought that, and that thing has been great.
Yeah.
Well, until last week when I had to pay 7 grand for a mold remediation fucking thing because I don't
Uh,
have my construction crew there to rip out walls and bleach them and paint them and refinish it and rip everything out and do it myself. It's I got to pay people, and yeah, I just got hosed by a contractor there. But anyway, um, yeah, and then Puerto Rico, I bought a condo, lived in there, and then found another condo that was like kind of all fucked up but really big, oceanfront, that was super cheap. I think it was like too fucked up for the gringos to buy and be afraid of refinishing, and too big and expensive for most of the Puerto Ricans to, and maybe they just didn't want to deal with it because, like, it had like windows smashed out of it, and it was kind of a thing. So renovated that and moved into that, and I just rented out my old one.
so
Yeah, I
that's where
wasn't
you're at
sure if I
now.
wanted to. Yeah, so now I'm in a super nice uh, penthouse oceanfront suite, which
Nice.
is super cool. But I got
Nice.
lucky on the price of it and managed to find a really good Dominican crew down here to smash the whole thing out for me for a really good price.
Yeah, yeah.
But
That's awesome, man.
yeah,
That's awesome, dude. So like you're just constantly going, man. I mean, how do you and you've been doing it for a long time now. So like how do you just keep that energy and that freaking momentum going like that? And you just constantly keep adding more stuff to your plate. Like how does that do you ever just get
I mean,
tired?
at some point, I need to like kind of step down from GMing and hire somebody to kind of manage this whole thing for me because it's getting a lot for me. I have a guy that I'm in talks with about doing that in fall, maybe starting to train him, and then I got that 7 week break to kind of spend some time with him to because it's a lot of training to do what I do, and I do it very quick. Um, you know, I got approached by one of the corporate clusters, and I looked into it, and it just wasn't for either of us. I don't think the shows, the machines and equipment sales is one thing. Like tattooers, I mean, they sell the shit on Amazon now. It's no
Right,
longer kind of a gate kept thing.
right.
The conventions are more of a personalized experience that I think if I would have, if I'd sell this to a corporate cluster, I think it would turn on them with the tattooers. I think
Sure.
a lot of the people like the villain arts things because like I'm a real, 34-year-old OG tattooer with, you know, a lineage going back to Eddie and all these people. Like, you
Right.
know, I've been in it, I lived it. I'm one of them.
Yeah. Yeah,
Probably
and
been
you
shot and stabbed more than most of them, you know?
and you have a loyal following. I mean, you got a lot of artists, well, like Flip Shades, like a lot of the Ink Master guys that are always at the shows. I mean, you have a loyal following for sure, and it's just crazy to, like I said earlier, I think a lot of people. I'm sure there are a lot of people out there that give you due credit, but then there's also a lot of people that are on the flip side of that give you a lot of shit because of how big the shows are or how many artists are at a show or whatever. But my perspective is that I feel like you're due a lot of respect just because if it wasn't for you building Villain Arts and the convention circuit the way you have, the tattoo industry wouldn't be, I mean, in combination with things like Ink Master, but in large part, I think you have a lot of responsibility for growing the tattoo industry over the past 15 years, especially. I mean, taking it out of the dark ages in those scary biker times to where it's now you do have soccer moms coming in getting tattoos and you got kids that want to get tattoos. And if you walk around the streets, I mean, just about everybody now has tattoos. So I don't think we would have evolved. I don't think guys like me would be in a healthy place today without guys like you doing what you've done. So I think there's a lot of respect that should be given your way. It's a big part of the reason why I've wanted to get you on the podcast for so long to just kind of talk about some of that and get your feelings on what your opinions are in regards to that. Obviously as humbly as you can say it, do you pat yourself on the back and do you recognize the impact that you've had in tattooing?
Uh, you know, I do. I'm still pretty humble. Like I don't really look at for that. I don't I mean a lot of people would just plaster that shit all over their fucking social media and it would become them as a campaign. And I'm kind of quiet on social media. I kind of just do my thing. I build what I built and I don't look for that praise. Don't get me wrong. I love riding my little scooter around there and enjoying the energy and the glow that I created for sure. Like I love sitting there with Stan and Eddie and Lyle and the whole group of old timers and just sitting in a circle at the Philly show 5 or 6 years ago, and Eddie saying, when you told me you were going to grow it and make this into a public thing, I had no goddamn idea what you were talking about, kid. I thought you were just fucking putting words together, but you know, you've done so much, and fuck those people that say, fuck you, and you got too big, and you exploited tattooing, and you raped tattooing. You didn't rape tattooing. You created tattooing. Like, to be able to see a half a baseball stadium full of people in here walking out with fucking bandages, like those people 30 years ago would spit on me for even having tattoos. My own mother, was close to disowning me when I got a sleeve, Eddie said. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Like they came from a time where tattooing was not cool. Tattooing was not accepted. And seeing me, through just heavy promotion, getting all the people in there, you know, promoting all, piggybacking off the Ink Master, kids, um, into growing a format that a tattoo convention is. You know, there isn't a fucking tattoo convention in America that isn't the elements that I created. You know, the
Right.
most imitated thing on the planet. I mean, they're half my entertainment is poached on my weekends off to do their shows.
Sure, sure.
Suspension is now a common thing at shows. Like, all the way down to just the little tiny nuances of the way my thing evolved. But one of the bigger things and I get a lot of the age group that really doesn't like what I did would be like the Joe Capobianco, that first round not picking on him specifically, but he's definitely like outspokenly, like crucified me on fucking podcasts, and that's cool. And I like Joe. You know,
Yeah, yeah.
it's just it is what it is. Sometimes a lot of those people came up in the '90s where it was tattooing was having a boom because of the magazines. There was a resurgence. They came from um, Joe and Paul were actually airbrush T-shirt artists before they got into tattooing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And going from like getting paid $20 to fucking airbrush a T-shirt for however long to making fucking lawyer money tattooing.
Right, right.
um, but a lot of that, the artists that are, that experienced the late '90s, the early 2000s when tattooing was really booming, before a lot of when the supply and demand was swung, you know, was swung in the favor of tattooers more than it is later on. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
A lot of them didn't like it because they thought that Ink Master TV and the promotion of it was increasing more people to getting to being on the supply end, X being a tattooer, and not the demand end of the clientele. So too many people got into tattooing too rapidly and started cutting that back. And I think a lot of them had a misconception about what I was doing for that. They're like, people like like Eric from Philly. He's like, all these artists are coming in. There's like, 1,500 tattoo artists working a weekend, and they're taking all the tattoos out of our market. And it's really not over the 28 years, with me running the 25 of that. Um, the money that I spent in advertising has created more of a public interest to support the demand of tattooing and how many people want to get tattooed. And also walking through a room, seeing the contest, seeing people with sleeves, seeing people with back pieces, they're like, oh, wow, I could get my whole back tattooed. I was just going to get a Taz today. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Um, it just the sheer volume of money I've spent advertising these conventions to draw new blood into our industry as a demand of new clientele has expanded tattooing so much more. And I'm in a city, for a weekend a year. There's 51 other weekends for them to make money. But what I did is I created an interest in tattoos. How many people do you know, no matter what age they are, stop at one tattoo? How many of
No,
them continue to just get tattooed for the rest of their fucking life? How
pretty
many
much.
people, how many soccer moms took that minivan to the Philly show and now they have forearm tattoos because it's cool in the book club now?
Yeah, yeah.
Before, you were goddamn not invited to the book club, you know?
Right, right. Or they got a tattoo and then they go back home and all their friends now they want to get a tattoo. So you're not in town now. They're going to go to the shops in town and get tattooed.
And I think a lot of them and a lot of people that don't like villain arts or how big I grew this thing and how far I expanded this thing or whatever. I think a lot of them don't really put the math together with how much the events itself year over year over year advertise and create a new interest for tattooing in the market that they're in. I think it's really important for them to also participate in the show, being local to, I mean, the Philly show. There's 30,000 people that come to the Philly show that live in the city you're in that would get tattooed by you in June.
Yeah.
I'm not there in June. You are. Come to the show. Advertise your shit. Get your name out there. Like it's it blows me away sometimes when people are really so narrow minded, and they're no matter how much no matter how much they or no matter how much I would want to click my ruby red heels and go back to '96 and make make a grand a day and be knee deep in fucking strippers and and
Yeah.
drunk every night. Like I love '96. Holy fuck, ruby red heels, yeah. But that that ship sailed. That ship
Yeah.
was 20 years ago, player. It
Yeah.
ain't
Yeah.
coming back.
Right.
Now you better get good at social media. You
Yeah.
better have sweet, sweet, clean lines for those little fucking fine line Pinterest tattoos
That's right.
because that's kind of the world evolving. And I didn't evolve that world, um, but that's the way the cards are dealt if you want to play the game now.
Yeah.
Um, but I get it and I see it, but nobody can really contest the impact that the shows that I did, all the impressions that get created, the fact that 10 years into me doing the Philly show, every single bar and restaurant that you walked into in Philadelphia, every server and every bartender had more than one forearm tattoo or the majority of their forearms tattooed. Um, Before me, Philly was a tattooed town. Was it socially acceptable to get hired at a fine dining restaurant with a tattoo showing? No, it is now. Did I do that? I don't know. Probably not. Did I not do that? Sure didn't. Do you know what I mean?
Right. Right.
Definitely
Questionable.
contributed to, especially in Philadelphia, having it much more publicly acceptable for people and just the sheer volume of how much people are tattooed and enthusiast over, just one weekend a year. It
Yeah.
really helped create it into a much heavier tattoo town. So, yeah, I mean, people can people can say whatever the fuck they want on me, but you can't take away that I permanently changed tattooing in a way that more people have gotten tattooed and created more impressions of, you know, posts, pictures of the tattoos, magazine articles, newspaper articles, TV coverage. Um, the amount of impressions to tattooing and the amount that tattooing is now put in front of the general public. Um, how many impressions get put on social media a year expanded of every artist doing multiple posts advertising that show, um, showing the work that was from that show, the award-winning tattoos, the everything. The like I said, I mean, even Ink Master was doing their casting at my in their
Yeah.
early part of their thing. Like the impact is really substantial for what I've done.
Yeah. I agree.
The industry definitely not the same after me.
No, no, for sure. That's what I mean. It's love you or hate you, it's undeniable the impact that you've had on the industry for sure. And you're right. It's just constantly evolving, and now you got to be good at social media. Now, how do you feel? I don't know how much. I don't really suppose it has much of an impact on your business so much. But how do you feel about all these regulations coming in? If you're even keyed in on all that stuff, how do you feel about tattooing becoming so mainstream now that the FDA is, scrutinizing the products in the space and the craft and what do you feel about that?
Mixed feelings, very mixed. In one capacity, um, I mean, it took one hepatitis outbreak in New York City to ban tattooing for 40 years. Do we need safety in our industry? Absolutely. Will allergic reactions to ink cause our industry to collapse? Will unsafe equipment? Will an outbreak of hepatitis in our industry ruin the wave that we have and, you know, force all these little soft handed kids to go drive Ubers? Um, yeah, it would. Um, so far, I'm kind of against the FDA, but at this point, I think we've outgrown the cottage industry of being able to properly manage ourselves as an industry. I think we lost control. I think um, products for sale on Amazon and wherever that fucking uh, made up name brand inks came from and what's in them is a danger to us.
Right.
I think if we don't get ahead of it, I think it's a necessary evil for the safety and growth of our business. And I hate to even say it like that. I just you know, I'm not playing checkers. I've been playing chess for 3 decades.
Right.
And you got to look ahead. You got to stay a couple moves ahead. And when you look ahead at how far it's expanded, how many people are in there, and how much our gatekeeping fell apart, and we're no longer a self-regulated industry the way that we were even 10 years ago. 10 years ago, it was still you were an apprentice. If you didn't come into tattooing and you didn't have an apprenticeship, you're pretty much ostracized from the industry until at least your work could really combat any kind of negative feelings that way.
Right.
And now it's just nobody gives a fuck. And I wish it was, but then again, like I said earlier, my ruby red heels don't work so great.
Right. Yeah.
um, I think it is necessary. I think at this point, I don't think the FDA has overstepped. I think they're I think it's a fight. I think with Niha, they're listening, but they're not listening. I think it's it's lucky that we have organizations like APT. It's lucky we have people like you that are participating within um, the communication with our industry and having liaisons to the government to speak to get with, to consult is definitely helpful. We're kind of on teetering on the edge of losing some of that, and it's kind of a constant little danger. Um, like I don't know. I mean, tattoos need to be safe, and like you said before, I mean, your grandpa got tattooed with fucking car paint in a back alley in fucking in a
Right.
military town.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, what did he get tattooed with? How many people had swelled up red tattoos that had mercury in it back in the 60s?
Yeah. Crazy.
Like, we didn't, but at one point, you know, tattooing did become safe. We did, I think as an industry, we were good, but I think having, especially ink with an oversight to the manufacture of pigments and the crossing to make sure that they have enough alcohol contents, that there's no bacterias in the inks, that there's no, do you know what I mean? I think that's really necessary. The rest of the equipment is pretty safe and kind of doesn't really need anything, and I don't think has any other interests of safety for anybody. Um, but the ink, I think the FDA is handling it a whole lot fucking better than Europe did, for sure.
So far.
Um, so far, will that happen? I don't know. We'll see. So far, you know, um, the APT is fighting the good fight. They have a lot of people interacting with, with NIHA and the rest of the, subgroups that the FDA is, working off of. The body art model code is a really impressive document that's been, very thoroughly consulted with both dermatologists and tattooers and other professional groups of people that it's really creating a standard. Uh, but then again, most of the health inspectors, and that's one of the first questions I ask them when they inspect my shows, is if they've actually read that or are aware of what that is. And 75% of the tattoo health inspectors have never even heard of, let alone read, let alone could argue the points of it.
Right.
So it's or even give a fuck. A lot of that it's a cash grab like Louisville did. But I don't know. I get why they're expressing an interest. I just hope they don't pull any triggers, and I hope that our industry remains safe and self-contained and self-monitored for as long as we can to, keep us safe. Because I'd hate to have the wave of popularity in tattooing get destroyed by a spread of disease or infection or problems.
Yeah, I guess my biggest concern looking at it is just the sheer number of artists that are coming into the industry every year and the rapid speed that they're coming into the industry in. There a lot of artists are not getting apprenticeships. They're just picking up tattoo machines. I mean, if you scroll on TikTok all the time, it makes me sick. I'm like, you'll just see somebody that goes off, picks up an Amazon tattoo kit and with some shit ass ink in it, and they're sitting in their house tattooing on their wife or their husband, and sometimes they're not even wearing gloves. And this is like 2025, and this is the shit I'm seeing on social media, and I'm just like, this is so
Yep.
fucked up, man. Like, this is so fucked up.
And
And what's that?
it's gotten beyond local health departments to be able to really monitor. Like back in the day, Philly health department used to go with the state police and bust up tattoo house parties, for illegally tattooing.
Well,
And they
that's
liked
what.
that because they'd always chase, they'd always get a drug arrest or two and somebody with warrants or scumbags said,
Well, and
but
that's what I mean is like what you said. It just takes a hepatitis breakout in a city or something like that. But that's where that shit happens at. It's not happening in a clean tattoo shop with tattoo artists that actually are educated and know how to do shit safely. It's happening in the with those fucking scratchers that don't have proper education, that don't know what safe equipment is and safe products are, and they're just tattooing whoever the fuck with whatever the fuck, and then the next thing you know, somebody's getting fucked up, and it just wreaks havoc on the actual legitimate artists that are making a living in this trade. So that, to me, that's my biggest fear is all the work that people like the APT and advocates like myself or Sean Brown or whoever, all the work that we're putting in every day to actually try to unify and make sure that we have a safe space and a safe future. When I see shit like that, it just is a big freaking kick in the nuts. You know what I mean? It's like, what the fuck?
yeah,
Or you'll even see
yep,
like in the tattoo groups on Facebook. I posted it maybe like 2 months ago or something like that. There was an artist that was, showing his tattoo inks that he was mixing in the back room of his shop, and he was offering to sell them to people. And I was like, God damn, I was like, you can't broadcast shit like that anymore, man. You got to keep that
yeah,
shit fucking, dude, stop telling people that. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Hope you don't have an ultrasonic back there.
Jesus fuck, dude. I mean, dude, there's all the wrong eyes on our industry now, and like you got gatekeeping. I mean, like you said, dude, you got to keep some of that shit under the table, man.
Yeah,
You can't just be going broadcasting all the shit that you're doing and putting that kind of that negative spotlight on an industry that's trying to be safe and roll with the tide. So it's crazy, but hats off to you, man. I really do look up to you, and I've always kind of respected your business acumen and you inspire a lot of people out there. I think and I'm sure you know that. Uh, and you're not a guy that's affected by the haters, I don't think. So
man.
you've certainly helped. You've certainly helped guys like me and small business owners like mine, and look at Razor Blade for example. They're at all your shows. I mean, I, I'm sure. I'm sure Paul's grateful as hell to you for being able to grow his business through your platform the way he has, and lots of businesses that are at your shows. So I mean, you're doing a lot for a lot of people.
Yep. Thank you.
So what is like what's has there ever been times like where it's gotten to be too much for you? Like you're just like, fuck this, like this shit's crazy, like crazy shit happens at the shows, the crowds get wild, people get wild, fights happen. Like, is there ever a time where you're just like, ah, fuck this shit's getting to be too much?
Yeah. Like, like where you order 16 union guys and it's a football game in Minnesota and you have to load out and only two of them show up and then one of them bitches and then disappears and the other one that's actually there working just reeks of fucking beer and you're like, how the fuck am I going to load this show out, you know? And then you just start going around the room and start bribing people. $100, help me, $100. Like all the security guards, like I bribed them to, stack tables until they just were like, yeah, yo, Troy, it's like 2 a.m. I'm out of here. And I'm like, dude, see you next year. Love you.
Yeah.
Um, and then, like 5 a.m. hits and you're still fucking, you throw your back out of, pushing a drape cart to the truck at 5 a.m. trying to load a show out because nobody wanted to work during COVID, and you still had a show to put up. And there's little things like Fort Lauderdale. Like I lost my white privilege in Fort Lauderdale in a open top dumpster fishing out the sharps containers that the Spanish speaking cleaners didn't know wasn't trash and
Oh,
misunderstood the red bags that got thrown into the open top dumpster. And, you know, I'm not the type of guy that puts my people in harm. And I just took off my suit right on the fucking filthy ass loading dock, threw it on a chair, dove in there in my fucking boxers and no shirt on, and fished all the sharps containers out of the fucking open top myself.
oh my God.
You know, 2 a.m. Fort Lauderdale food filled fucking dumpster.
Fuck, bro.
Um, you know, and it's like, you know, people see me at the Philly show, drinking hand, riding a scooter around, and they're like, "Oh man, that guy's a fucking king."
He's having a
Yeah,
good time.
yeah. Welcome to the dumpster in Fort Lauderdale, motherfucker. It ain't
Yeah.
all easy.
Yeah. That's what I
You know.
wanted to get into, man. Like a lot of people don't see what goes on behind the scenes and how hard you have to work and how fast you have to move all the time and all the not even to mention all, how many people are on the Villain Art staff now?
Oh man. Um, two office girls, two silkscreen guys, two warehouse guys, and then three t-shirt girls per show, two artist area people, two full-time truck drivers slash artist area people. Carl the MC, Electra who does social media in the contest, Jim who does social media. So I don't know how many is it. What am I up to? 12, 15, you know,
And you got to
people that are
manage
just
all those
full
people.
time. Yeah, I got to manage them, you know, and then I got another 10 people that are construction workers. I have three tattoo shops, building a fourth. It's a lot. I'm building a bar. For some reason, I thought it'd be a great idea to own a bar.
In Puerto
Um,
Rico?
in Philly.
Okay.
Um, I have a really extensive collection of dead things like oddities, skulls, like human skulls, plastinated people, like dead babies in jars, like kind of if you've ever been to the Meter Museum, I have
Yeah.
a personal collection that would be equal to about a third of that museum.
Right.
So I'm going to open a bar called Philly Curio, like a curiosity cabinet curio,
Yeah.
and open kind of like a swanky, weird, gothy cocktail lounge type of museum bar out of it, which
Okay.
I think will be really fun and cool. Um, I mean, I'm going to design it. I want nothing to do with actually running a bar restaurant or any of the
Yeah, you're like me.
fucking
I've
bullshit
always thought
behind
it.
that. I
I've
got a
always.
PhD on one side of the bar. I'll give you a hint. It's where the stools are.
You're right. I'm a good patron, not a good bar manager.
But at the same time, I'm a foodie and I like the things I like,
Yeah.
So I'm excited doing kind of a Cajun fusion, menu is
Uh-huh.
what I'd like to do. weird food that's fun in a weird spot that's fun.
Yeah.
So, yeah, projects. So,
How often do
yeah,
you go back to Philly?
couple times a year. Like I used to go back a lot more, but I'm up to so many shows and whatever. So now it's like I'm not. I wish I was back in Philly more. I love Philly. Philly's great. It's I'm glad I don't live there anymore because I just kind of really need after all the noise of the weekend, I kind of need like an oceanfront condo and look at the ocean. And
Yeah.
even though like my typical day in Puerto Rico is still like 9 hours worth of emails and planning or getting this booth map set up or hiring the security for this or doing whatever the fuck, sorting whatever fucking drama of whatever stupid people have.
Yeah.
Um, at least I can go walk the beach for a half hour and
Yeah.
an hour, go, you know, on a day off, I can just, you know, take a break, go float in the water, go snorkel. Puerto Rico's magic. The island's so beautiful. Love it here.
Yeah, yeah. I've only been
So
to Puerto Rico once, but it was a great time when I was there. I took my whole family there one year. That's probably back around 2000 and Jesus Christ, 8 maybe.
nice.
But yeah, yeah, I'd love to get back there and go back to the rainforest and stuff there. It's real cool. But yeah, what's next? You gonna add more shows still? You got more cities on the hit list?
I took Orlando off the list for next year. Just I don't know. I tried it 3 times. It was okay. It just wasn't quite, you know, not quite what I wanted out of it. The big convention center there was very user unfriendly. Then I went to the fairgrounds, and the fairgrounds was really nice and cool, but kind of run down, not really where I can grow anything. Just didn't really draw what I wanted. Um, I'm trying. Oh wait, I should wait till I'm contracted before I say it. Yeah, I got one city I'm replacing with, but at this point, I'm going to save. I don't think I want to do more. I'll be at 31, 32. I might do the Warship again next year. I'm not really sure. We'll talk to them. I've done it 4 times. The Warship is this small little uh, warship from the 1800s that's in the river in Philadelphia. And I
Yeah,
do like a little joint 30 tattooers tattooing in a boat kind of uh, nonprofit thing with the
yeah,
Seaport Museum there.
yeah, yeah.
It's fun. I did that like a month ago, and that was real cool. I actually tattooed there, just set up and I tattooed, kind of running and overseeing it, but still got a bunch of tattoos in doing Philadelphia Eddie acetates.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
have a big collection of his hand cut acetates.
Oh
So
wow.
I was actually just doing charcoal rubbing and smashing out little acetate tattoos,
Damn.
which was fun.
That's super
Uh,
cool.
I don't tattoo much anymore. Just too busy with the travel and villain arts to really tattoo for a living. But I miss it, and that was fun.
Yeah, I get it.
Broke out some super old coil machines and just slamming it out.
Yeah. Yeah, what's your favorite thing in your collection? Like tattoo collection? What's your favorite thing that you own?
I mean, the most expensive thing I own is probably a Wagner machine. Um, my favorite, well, I have Philadelphia Eddie's urn. That would, definitely be my favorite.
Yeah,
Like I
yeah.
ended up with his urn,
That's pretty crazy.
which is cool. Like, yeah, um, yeah. So
And you obviously like collecting dead stuff.
I love collecting dead stuff. I got a lot of that. Necromancer masks, Tibetan skulls, Peruvian elongated skulls, like a lot of really crazy, crazy stuff with that. I've like full size human centaur, like it's a body of a person with the back of a zebra, so
Yeah,
it's like a centaur,
really?
fully big articulated skeletons. I got a lot of really crazy stuff. Tattoo wise, I have a lot of flash, a lot of I have 8 Sailor Jerry sheets, you know, name the 40s 50s guy I got a sheet from him.
Original
Um,
Flash.
Original Flash.
Yeah, wow.
I have about 50 original Philadelphia Eddie Flash sheets, and a shit ton of stencils. Probably 100 plus machines with 30 of them being pre-capacitor.
Do you have all that on display somewhere, or is it just like in your personal collection?
Personal collection. Every once in a while, the Philly show, I set up like a two table thing and try to set up, like a fun display. A bunch of you know Thailand and native kind of little boxes and little collecting things, and got a bunch of native stuff too. Um, Tribal, like authentic tools and stuff like that.
Yeah,
So I have enough stuff to set up a nice thing. I've been working with the Tattoo Heritage Project people
yeah, yeah,
and trying to support them. I'm donating San Diego. I donated 12 booths to them to fill with heavy hitters to support the show, and
yeah,
got a lot of really good, Tim Hendricks came out. There's just a lot of really good. Chewy brought a lot of his collection. Um, Freddie Negretti was there. There was, a lot of really good, heavy hitting guys. So, they did well in curating really good artists for me, and I did good in donating booths to promote the project, the Heritage Project. They're doing Nashville next weekend or this coming up weekend. Tattoo Heritage Project's coming out there. They got a nice little artist list. Chad Koplinger is coming out. He lives in Nashville. A bunch of his guys are, you know, doing it. So it's cool to see them pull a lot of the older, real good tattooers that never really travel or do a lot of shows anymore out of the woodwork to, come to the shows. So I'm excited for that and excited for the project of, Tattoo Heritage or hopefully they get the whole museum and project off the ground that a lot of these artifacts and shit that I own, like what's going to happen to eight Sailor Jerry sheets when I die,
yeah, yeah.
where's
That's
it all going to go? Whereas there's a lot of older guys that I'm worried what's going to happen to their collections,
right. Yeah,
like Don Lucas in New Orleans. I went to his house and he's got this 6 bedroom Victorian, and the entire thing is flashed out with everything like 70s and below, 1970s and below.
right.
And I'm like, holy fuck, you know? And he's lighting up his cigarette. I'm like, don't smoke in here. You're gonna burn this fucking place down. You know how much history's in here? Like, what the fuck?
Yeah,
Yelling at the guy not to smoke in his own house.
yeah, yeah. You got to get all that stuff into a museum somewhere, or like start your own museum or something, man. Like, got to get that stuff out there where people can see it.
Well, and I thought about doing that, when I was younger or, with my collection and doing this. And now I'm just opening it into a bar for part of what I have. Museums are tricky, and it's a project of passion, and it's also um, a system of grants and government to keep them running and keep them flowing. You
Yeah,
know, it takes a lot of money. Most museums lose money and are subsidized by the cities they're in. So I'm hoping that the city of Long Beach gets behind the Tattoo Heritage Project, and that a lot of these people that have these beautiful collections, that eventually their stuff ends up there and doesn't get lost in time.
right, right. Yeah, like I was saying at the beginning, I think it's really important to preserve that history. And man, I always enjoy seeing that stuff. I go to Jimmy's got that tattoo museum down in at Lucky's in Florida, and man, he's just got a massive amount of stuff, and it's always cool to go in there and just look at
Yeah,
all of that.
super cool. Grims in KC has a nice little collection. There's a couple people, traveling that have nice collections. At one point, there was like three of them in New Orleans, and then now I don't think any of them are there anymore. Um, but I got to see three different little tattoo museums in New Orleans at one point.
Yeah,
Um,
New Orleans is a fun town too. Well,
I love New Orleans.
I'll be coming to Villanarks, New Orleans because the APT's having their annual meeting there, so
Cool.
that'll be a good time out there. Go eat some oysters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The food there is so good.
Oh man.
I
Yeah.
love the I love that Cajun food.
Yeah, I
Love
love
it.
New Orleans just for the I mean it's just such a huge art and music town. I love it. Food.
Yeah. No, it's New Orleans is probably my favorite town in America for sure. It's yeah, it's so it definitely has its own vibe, you know.
Yeah, yeah, man. Well, dude, is there anything else that you want to impart wisdom upon today's tattoo generation? Any words of wisdom?
Um do every tattoo as if it were your last. Work hard at it. Tattooing in a place where it's almost given to you. Give back what you take. You really work hard at it. If you treat tattooing well, it'll treat you well. You know, go after it. Never get lazy. Like keep getting better. The way to succeed in tattooing is to never give up. Always keep learning.
Right,
You just every day you get up and you do better. You learn more. And when you stop learning, when you stop getting better, you know, you really got to take a step back and have a little talk with yourself.
right.
You really you want to be in this industry and make money and do nice things. It's a lifestyle. You got to learn it. You got to keep going with it. You know, do every tattoo as if it were your last.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I appreciate you taking time with me today and giving me a couple hours of your extremely busy schedule and carving that out. Spend time with me, and it means a lot to have you here and hear your story and just uh, just see what you've done in the industry. And I appreciate it and thank you. And always wishing you well.
Thank you. Appreciate it.